Welcome to Food Friends, a podcast inspiring home cooks to try new dishes in the kitchen by sharing trusted recipes, tips, and friendship. Hi, I'm Sonia.
And I'm Carrie. We met in Los Angeles over 15 years ago as personal chefs and haven't stopped talking about food since. We're so glad you're here. Hi, Sonia.
Hi, Carrie. I can't wait to hear what your best bite of the week is.
Sonia, I have been so excited to share this recipe with you. When we recorded our spring hosting recipe, we talked about this very classic penne pasta with asparagus recipe that was really kind of made famous by this cook named Faith Willinger, who's an Italian cook. And it's really one of those very classic Italian recipes that's super seasonal and super easy. So I made the asparagus pasta this week, and my family loved it. It really reminds me of the green pasta recipes that people make, where you take some kind of greens and you cook them in the same water that you cook the pasta in, and then you put it into your blender or your Vitamix, and you make this green sauce that's basically all vegetables. What's really kind of elegant about this version is you take a pound of asparagus, and you cut the tips off and you save them. And so you end up with pasta and asparagus tips in this really rich, creamy, zesty sauce.
So what you mean is like you making a sauce out of the asparagus, the bulk of the asparagus, but then you're also cooking those tips and keeping them separate so that they can be mixed in and you can see the asparagus and not just a green sauce.
Yes, exactly. And so it's like pasta and a little bit of vegetable, but in this green asparagus sauce, basically. You definitely want to blanch your asparagus because it really preserves that beautiful green color, but it's a little bit more of a muted color than when you make a kale pasta like that. So I snapped my asparagus, I cut the tips off. You just have 1 pot of water. You really want to salt it well. You get your asparagus blanched, you put the stems into your blender. The one tip that I think I would add is when you cut your tips off of the stems of your asparagus, I would keep them separate because you don't want to sort of fish out the tops of the asparagus from the stems that you're going to puree in your blender. So I did the long stems first. I put them in my blender, and then I threw the tips into the hot water. I blanched them. I pulled them out. Once both of your different pieces of asparagus are blanched, then I put my pasta into the water and let it cook. And this recipe calls for penne. I know you don't like that shape of pasta, and it's really given me pause. I don't buy it anymore.
It's not that I don't like it as much as Jonathan, my husband, doesn't like it. But penne pasta to me is just, when there's a world of other shapes, it's just the last one I reach for. But that doesn't mean that has to be everyone's preference. And I feel like I would make this, but I don't see why I couldn't use a fusilli or a keti. Like,
Yeah.
I think that could be really beautiful because you're talking about making a sauce with blanched asparagus. You have blanched asparagus tips. That sauce, green sauce, could even be good on fettuccine. I just feel like this is where pasta is so versatile,
Yes.
and whatever shape you feel called to should be what you use or what you have in your pantry.
Well, I let my son, Mac, who's 9, I let him pick the pasta shape, and he used this cavatappi, which is sort of curly, short noodles. It was such a fun shape. So I got that cooking in the pasta water. And then into your blender with your asparagus stems, you blend a little bit of that pasta water and olive oil and a little bit of lemon zest. And I was kind of like, oh, I wonder if I need lemon juice in this. And I just followed the recipe as it was. And it's amazing how much flavor that blended lemon zest added to the olive oil and the asparagus. So once your pasta is cooked, you save a little bit more of that pasta water in case you need to loosen up that sauce. You drain it, you put it back in the hot pot. You pour this asparagus sauce over it, and you toss it with a ton of Parmesan. And
you need that Parmesan for sure.
And you need that Parmesan, but it doesn't taste Parmesan-y, I don't think. It's just this light asparagus, slightly lemony pasta. It's so creamy. Has no cream. It's just olive oil. I was so surprised by how great the flavor was. So, as I'm stirring it and as I'm tasting it, I just said to my husband and my son, I was like, wow, you guys, this is really good. And so I bring it over to the table. and everyone starts eating it. And I don't remember who it was that said this, but someone said, "This is a sexy pasta."
It sounds like something James would say,
I
but
mean, it might have been Meg. I don't remember, but we were all laughing because we all love a green pasta. We love a pesto pasta. This was such a light, springy, summery version that was really satisfying. And again, it was the brilliance and the simplicity of it.
sometimes just a good olive oil blended with a lightly cooked green, in this case asparagus, creates such a silky texture and such a luxurious texture that you really don't need much else. You don't need butter, you don't need cream. The Parmesan I adds like a saltiness
Yeah.
probably more than anything else. And it just sounds like the perfect spring evening dish. I would make this for entertaining too.
Oh, I would easily make this for entertaining. And I think it's also worth sharing one additional tip, which is that this is where you want to use a good olive oil that you have. And I want to offer a shout out to my friend Jenny, whose family has a couple hundred olive trees, and they invited us to come with a group of people and harvest their olives. So we used their olive oil in this dish, which also felt like another deeper connection to it, too.
That's the dream, having
Uh,
knowing someone who can provide you with olive oil. That feels really special. But there are ways to get a decent olive oil that's even affordable right now. I look out for cold pressed olive oils. I look for olive oils also from a single origin. That's something my grandmother always taught me. So instead of comes from Spain, Italy, and Greece, look for just one place, Greece, Spain, California, whatever it may be.
Okay, Sonia, I am really excited to hear about what was your best bite this week.
So my best bite is this Lebanese dish called arayas, which I think in Arabic means bride and groom. And I think the reason it means it is it's because it's this stuffed pita pocket. So there's two distinct elements. So what you're doing is you're making a ground meat mixture that you stuff into a halved pita, and then the raw meat and the pita all get cooked at the same time. And
So wait,
which
can we
makes
just back up? So you're taking a raw meat mixture that's spiced and you're putting it into a pita and you're cooking the whole thing together.
yes, I'm going to walk you through
Okay,
every step of
wow.
it. So I actually was reminded of this recipe this year at Passover because I had seen Sivan's Kitchen, I think it is, make arayas in matzah. So I made it with matzah, but I've also made it with pita. And it's kind of good both ways. I do have to say, if you make it with matzah, the matzah gets so amazingly
Oh,
crispy and
wow.
almost like a tostada shell. But let me walk you through because it will make more sense. You make a very simple spice ground beef mixture. You take your ground beef, you add a chopped onion to it. You could grate the onion if you want. You could do it in a food processor if that makes it easy for you. And then you're adding spices. Every recipe is different, but usually there's some cumin or coriander, chili pepper, or, pepper flake, those kinds of spices. Typically a little bit of a warming spice like allspice or cinnamon is added as well, salt and pepper. And a lot of people add fresh parsley to it as well. In fact, I didn't have any fresh parsley the most recent time I made it, so I didn't add it, and it was perfectly good. But it's kind of almost like a kofta mix. So if
Yeah.
you even have like a kofta recipe you like, it will work with this. And I think it will work with lamb and beef equally well. I bet it would even work with turkey. I just haven't made it that way. Okay. And so then you take your pita, you stuff it with a big spoonful. You're not wanting to overstuff these. These are meant to be like a thin layer of meat, which is going to help it cook quickly. And I like to preheat my oven to about 400. Every recipe is a little different. Some people have you cook it all in a pan, and some people have you cook it in a pan and transfer it to the oven. That's my preference, but you can actually just cook this all in a pan. So you stuff all your little halved pitas with a thin layer of meat. You get your skillet hot. You add a little bit of oil to it. And then you're sort of frying each side of the arayas in the pan. You're getting them golden brown on each side. You can kind of press them down with your spatula so they really flatten. And what happens is basically you're making a pita chip almost on the
Yeah, or
outside.
like a grilled
And the
cheese.
meat,
It's the idea of a grilled cheese, but it's stuffed with meat and it's all cooked together.
the one other important part of this recipe, though, is that you also brown it on the side where the meat is exposed. So you
Oh.
you do both sides and then you flip it sort of towards the center. And so you get that wonderful browned meat on the edge and it's all kind of contained. If you have a thicker layer of meat, that's why it's helpful to pop these in the oven to finish
Right.
cooking. If it's a thinner layer, you can just cook them all in the pan. So that's sort of a preference, and we'll link a recipe. And then almost every recipe suggests a tahini sauce to go with it, which is just tahini paste, grated garlic, lemon juice, and water, your basic tahini sauce. I also top these with freshly chopped scallion and with torn cilantro, or parsley is good too. And when I made them this week, Jonathan was like, this is very gourmet. It feels really special, but to me, it was one of my easier weeknight meals.
I mean, I think it's this mix of simplicity and care that goes into this because you're really just talking about bread and meat. It's like a hamburger. I'm putting this creamy sauce on at the end, but I think the specialness is in all the details of crisping one side, crisping the other side, crisping the meat side so you have that caramelized meat flavor. And I think what's also so interesting about this is that you can really spice this to your own liking. I imagine there's probably some garlic powder in there too. I love the onion. I bet that adds some moisture too, which is probably really nice, right?
Yeah, I didn't add garlic powder, but I most often usually add minced fresh garlic.
Yeah.
But you could add garlic powder. You could use fresh garlic. Some people, I've seen recipes with baharat spice added. If you like it just basic, you can do ground beef and onion and call it a day, and
Yeah.
that will still be good. It's more about the technique and more about the textures. It is so satisfying to have a crackly, crisp edge around a meat filling. I don't know how to explain it, but it's worth trying if you've never had it.
I am really sold on this. I really want to try this. And I really feel like my family would love this. This feels like a very family friendly dish. And as a parent, I think, especially when my son was young, I was always thinking about trying to introduce flavors to him. And this to me is one of those really great canvas. A pita is something kids can recognize. I think my instinct would be to use a really lean ground beef. What do you remember what you used? Does it
Yeah,
matter?
I actually just had 80/20,
Oh,
and
okay.
I kind of liked that the oil that came out of it sort of helped
Right.
flavor.
It helped fry it
Like,
a little
I
bit.
basically used a little less oil to fry it because I knew the beef was fattier. It's a
Yeah.
good point. But if you didn't want that excess oil, then a lean ground beef would work well. And I am curious to try it with something like turkey. Does it work like that? It must. I'll look for a recipe. But the beef is just so satisfying. Ground beef is really one of those. It's a hamburger.
Yeah.
It tastes good.
It's a hamburger, but I like the idea of adding the allspice to it. Just a couple of those little pops of flavor really introduces kids to other ideas too. So I really love that. I'm totally going to try it.
Yeah. Carrie, I know we usually only do one best bite, but I just have to mention something because we talked about a recipe that you were skeptical about the other day. And I haven't updated you on this, but I made it at Passover this year. And it's worth mentioning because it was the surprise hit of my meal, and it was a condiment. It was the green garlic salsa verde.
Oh my gosh. I'm still skeptical about
I
green
know you
garlic.
are. So I made the green garlic salsa verde. I used the Wishbone Kitchen recipe as my inspiration. I modified it to my liking. It's basically just green garlic. You add anchovies, capers, lemon. That's the base of it. We'll link the recipe in the show notes. I served it alongside my brisket, alongside my blood orange and fennel braised chicken. I served it with smashed root vegetables. People were putting it on top of everything. Multiple people asked me for the recipe after. I have never made something that people were like so excited
Let
by.
me
So
guess,
I
there
just,
was none left
yes,
over.
there was none left over.
Yeah.
In fact, I had made a big batch, but you have to add lemon juice right before serving. So I had to go back to the kitchen and make more for the table
Wow.
because it was gone so fast.
Well, I have to say that's really exciting. And Sonia, I'm so glad that you brought up an update because I also have an update for you, which is your enthusiasm for the fat and flour pie dough that Nicole Rucker makes. She just came onto our podcast a couple of weeks ago and you reported back that you made this strawberry rhubarb pie that your friends went crazy for. And you just sort of sharing how easy this pie crust was really encouraged me to give it a try because even though I like to make pie, I usually do whatever I can to avoid making the actual butter pie crust. I usually make like a graham cracker crust. So, anyway, I had an event for my son's elementary school and I agreed to bring the desserts. So, I made 4 pies. And so I
A
made
lot of
it's
pies,
a
Carrie.
lot of pies, but I have to tell you, Sonia, the pie that people lost their minds over was this banana cream pie with white chocolate in the cream. And it went so quick, and people were like, "What is this banana cream pie?" I'm not even a big fan of white chocolate, but you basically make this very basic ganache where you melt white chocolate chips into heavy cream, and then you whip that into your vanilla pudding and put it in your shell with bananas and pudding and cream, and it just could not have been more delicious.
This is the banana cream pie recipe from Nicole Rucker's
Yes.
book as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing that because I love banana cream pie. It doesn't surprise me.
People were like, "Wow, what is in that banana pie?" And I was like, "It's white chocolate ganache. It's really delicious."
I do think that's one of the brilliance of her recipes. She sometimes adds just one little twist, one little ingredient that turns a classic dessert into something that really wows people. I'm so excited that you've been making your pie crust. And we'll link her book and all the recipes we talked about in the show notes today.
Yeah, until next time.
Bye.
Thanks for being our food friend.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with friends. We love hearing from you, so follow us on Instagram or drop us a line at foodfriendspodcast.com.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you and your food friends. Happy cooking and eating.